Welcome back. Where were we? Where did I last see you? I think it was in Perth.
In July?
In Perth, in Western Australia, right? Remember that class? Okay. Okay, so tonight I'm going to begin a series of classes on 4 of what we call the Arab Gulf states. From left to right, up on the screen there, you can see them: Kuwait, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and Oman. So those are the 4 Gulf states we're going to be dealing with. In each case, we're going to briefly examine sort of the demographics and historical events associated with the country. Then we'll take a tour of some of its most significant sites, similar to how we did with the Australia class. A bit of history, a bit of demographics, and then take you on a tour. So, all 4 of the states that we're dealing with are members of the 7 Arab states of the Persian Gulf, which include both Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and Bahrain. We won't be covering those, but they're part of that larger group. And those 7 states are part of what is known as the League of Arab States, which was formed in Cairo in 1945. And currently has 24 members. So we're just going to deal with 4 of these Gulf states over the next 4 weeks. So let's begin with Kuwait. The state of Kuwait is a country in the geopolitical region known as the Middle East. You can sort of just look up on the map there. It's situated on the northern edge of the Arabian Peninsula, at the head of the Persian Gulf, bordering Iraq to the north and Saudi Arabia to the south. I think if my pointer worked, but it doesn't on this, I would be able to go, psst. But hopefully you can see where those are. With a coastline of about 311 miles, it also shares a maritime border with Iran across the Persian Gulf. It's a city-state with the country's population, most of it residing in Kuwait City. It's the capital and largest city, and as of 2024, it had a population of 4.8 million. Now, what's interesting, of the 4.8 million, only 1.5 million are citizens, while the remaining 3.29 million are foreign nationals from numerous countries. All of these Gulf states tend to bring in foreign nationals to do the work. If you go to a hotel, you're going to find probably Filipino help. All this because the citizens are more or less independently wealthy, and we'll get to why that is later. But it's the world's 3rd largest number of foreign nationals as a percentage of the population. Like I said, its citizens make up less than 30% of the country. Islam is the official religion of Kuwait, and Islamic law, known as the Sharia, is the primary source of legislation. The vast majority, that's about 75% of the Kuwaitis, are Sunni Muslims. You might remember if you've remembered anything that I probably ever taught, it's probably going to hopefully be the difference between Sunni and Shia Islam, because I think I've talked about it 35 times. But in any case, we'll do it one more time briefly. So, Sunni Islam accepts that Muhammad's legitimate successors were known as the caliphs, and they were selected by tribal leadership. That over history led to a number of famous caliphates, which was the center of the Islamic world, similar to what the Vatican would be to Catholicism. So you had the Umayyad Caliphate in the 8th century, the Abbasid Caliphate in the 11th century, the Ottoman Caliphate, which lasted till the 20th century. Those were all Sunni Muslims. While Shia Islam believes that role should have remained within Muhammad's family and should have gone to his cousin Ali. So that was the major difference. So about 25% of the population of Muslims in Kuwait is Shia. What are the two dominant Shia Muslim countries? Iran and Iraq. Okay. Iran and Iraq. Iran, 99%, Iraq about 85%. So, the Kuwait Constitution guarantees freedom of belief, freedom of religious practice, as long as it does not conflict with public policy or morals. That's a big but. Foreign nationals are allowed to practice their own religions. Public worship for non-Islamic religions is limited to designated buildings. You can't just go out if you are Hindus and worship one of the big Hindu festivals in the streets of Kuwait City. It would be restricted to a certain. Proselytizing, that is missionary activity by non-Muslims, is not allowed and can be and will be prosecuted. So you can't have any missionary activity in Kuwait. So, like other Arab states of the Persian Gulf, Kuwait is what we call an emirate. What does that mean? The emir is the leader, and he would be like the monarch. So the word emir is the same as a monarch. And an emirate, therefore, is a country that is ruled by an emir. He's the head of state. And here you see the current head of state, Emir Mashal Al-Ahmad. And he's from the ruling Al-Sabah family, which dominates the country's political system. I'll talk about how that happened when we get to the history. So in the political system, the emir appoints a prime minister. They have a prime minister because, as we'll see, at one point they were a British protectorate. And whenever you find a British protectorate, you tend to find British parliamentary forms of government when they emerge. There's a National Assembly composed of 50 elected members serving 4-year terms. It has legislative and oversight powers that include drafting, passing laws, questioning ministers, approving budgets, etc. However, the emir can dissolve the National Assembly and call for new elections at any time. He can also veto legislation which the Assembly can override with a 2/3 majority. Getting a 2/3 majority against an emir would be like the Giants winning the pennant this year. They've still got an outside chance, but in any case. So, the official language is Arabic, but English is widely used in terms of business, education. It's taught in the schools and tends to serve as a second language. Education is free at all levels in government schools. It is compulsory up to the end of what they call intermediate school. Secondary schools and university classes are gender segregated. You have classes for men and classes for women. The major curriculum of these institutions, especially the higher institutions, Arabic, Islamic studies, math, science, English, history. Those are the major subjects that are taught, with a great emphasis on Arabic and Islamic studies. So now let's take a look at some of the important events in Kuwait's history. Don't try and remember all the details. First of all, you'll fail. Just the big ideas and some of the more important themes that will emerge. So we'll start here, 636 CE, when Muslim forces defeated the Persian Sasanian Empire at the Battle of Qadisiyah. This was really unexpected. The Islamic armies had come out of Arabia and took on one of the big empires of the time. Actually, they took on two. They defeated the Byzantines, and then they defeated the Persians. Historians still are amazed at how this happened. But in any case, this battle in 636, and the region included modern-day Kuwait, then came under Islamic rule. The area was, now this is 7th century. This is nomadic. It wasn't heavily populated at the time. It's not heavily populated even today, but it wasn't heavily populated. It was nomadic. It was mainly used as a trading center. That whole area, right, with the Persian Gulf down around through India, back up into, and this will be one of the reasons it has been so important geographically in historical terms, and still is today. But it became incorporated into the larger Islamic world. So we're going to move ahead now to the 16th century. And this was when Kuwait was under the control of the Portuguese Empire. You may remember from your early history, maybe, if you studied the colonial expansion, 16th century, the Portuguese were the first to really move out into the New World. And they established trading posts because they were very interested in the spices from India. And when I say spices, largely peppers, but they were not for taste. Spices were used mainly because there was no refrigeration. Spices were used for that, and it became a big market. So anyway, the Portuguese came in, and the Spanish in other areas began to control the trade routes, and they took over this area in the 16th century. And this is what we generally call the period of European colonialism, which led to a series of events, and I would suggest the reverberation and consequences we're still experiencing today. If you want to understand the Middle East today, you have to understand colonialism. If you want to understand most of Asia today, you have to understand what went on during the colonial period. In any case, we still have these Portuguese fortresses that were built along the coastline. Notice the cannons. That's how you control the shipping lanes. So these we still find ruins of the Portuguese being there. The Portuguese were then expelled by the Dutch and the British because all of these European countries were in competition for this very lucrative economic trade that was taking place. So the Portuguese were finally driven out by the Dutch and the British in 1602. And then we had the Ottoman Empire. Now the Ottoman Empire is an Islamic empire centered in what is today Turkey. And of course you can see their close proximity. So they wanted to control the area as well. But once the Portuguese were gone, they really felt there wasn't a great need because the British and the Dutch didn't have a lot going on at the time. They were interested in other parts. So the Ottomans didn't have a military presence there, and that proved to be a big mistake. The Ottomans were eventually expelled by a tribal group. An Arab tribal group known as the Bani Khalid. It was sort of a confederacy of tribes. See, if you look at Arabia at this time, it was made up of different tribes. And these tribes were often at war with one another, but periodically they would form a confederacy. And this is what happened, and they were able to really drive the Ottomans away because the Ottomans hadn't given it much attention. And this would rule this Bani Khalid group would rule southern Iraq, Kuwait, and eastern Arabia into the 18th century. So for close to 2.5 centuries, this confederacy was really ruling what today we call Kuwait. Sometime in the mid-1700s, another tribal group known as you don't have to remember all this unless you're going to be on Jeopardy. and your category is Kuwait. But in any case, we have to see how this sort of evolved. This tribal group settled in Kuwait, and they were able to wrest control from the Bani Khalid. And while they're important is because their leader was Sabah ibn Jaber, and his descendants would rule Kuwait from that time to today. So in 1899, Sheikh Mubarak al-Sabah, this gentleman here, signed an agreement with the British government, making Kuwait a British protectorate. If you know anything about British colonial history, this is how the Brits operated. They would find a kingdom, they would give them protection, because they had a vast naval forces. But you don't give protection for free. These states had to make agreements, usually trade and economic agreements, with the British. So they got protection, and in turn they gave economic rights to the British. And they had the British got exclusive trade rights. That means only the Brits could trade in this area. And denied the Ottoman provinces to the north any ports. And then in 1913, there was what was known as the Anglo-Ottoman Convention. And Kuwait was established as an autonomous district of the Ottoman Empire, but protected by Great Britain. It would be like saying, okay, California's a state, but it's going to be protected by Mexico, somebody else. Okay, we're part of the empire, but because the British are really now consolidating their control. Now, if you want to remember a date, because I don't believe in dates, but if you want to remember one, February 22nd, 1938. Black gold. Oil was first discovered at what was known as the Bergen Field in Kuwait. And between 1946 and 1980, Kuwait experienced a period of prosperity called the Golden Era of Kuwait. Crude oil was first exported in 1946. And by 1950, there was a major public work program undertaken so that citizens could now enjoy a luxurious standard of living. All this oil revenue, a lot of it would go to the emir, but then he could distribute it to his citizens. And even today, this is why you have this major distinction. The citizens get paid to be citizens. Whereas the workers come in from foreign countries, India, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Philippines, and do the work. But it was all because of this oil. And by 1952, the country became the largest oil exporter in the Persian Gulf. In June of 1961, Kuwait became an independent state with the end of the British protectorate. By the 1960s, the sun was setting on the British Empire. And they were backing off, so Kuwait became independent in June of 1961. And Sheikh Abdullah Al-Salim Al-Sabah became the Emir of Kuwait. Now, Iraq initially refused to recognize the country's independence. by maintaining that Kuwait historically was part of Iraq. And there was some legitimacy. It depends how far back you go. You can always claim something was part of something if you go far back enough. Remember that as we move down the line. Iraq later backed down because the British were really in charge of what was going on in Iraq at the time. They showed a show of force. Britain said, and the Arab League then supported Kuwait. So the Iraqis back off. And there was a treaty of friendship signed in 1963, in which Iraq recognized the 1932 border with Kuwait. So it looked like things were okay. Under the terms of the newly drafted constitution, because they're now independent, Kuwait held its first parliamentary elections in 1963. So it's emerging as a parliamentary democracy under the rule of a monarch, which was what you really have in Britain, if you look close, except that the monarch doesn't have any power, really. So things are developing. And then, of course, there was this terrible event, the Iran-Iraq War, which lasted for 8 years. A very bloody affair. They figure at least a million on each side were killed. Ended in a stalemate. In any case, Kuwait supported Iraq during that war. As a result, there were a number of pro-Iran terror attacks across Kuwait. Because if you're an ally of the enemy, you're the enemy. That's just almost by definition. After the war ended, Kuwait declined an Iraqi request to forgive a $65 billion debt. The war really took it out of Iraq. So they had borrowed money from Kuwait during the war, and at the end they asked for that debt to be canceled. And Kuwait says, sorry. And tensions, as a result, developed. And then Iraq claimed that Kuwait was stealing its oil from a field near the border. Whether that's true or not didn't really matter. The claim was enough to arouse the Iraqi people. And in 1990, we had the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait under the leadership of Saddam Hussein. Does anyone remember that event? It's not that far back. Yeah, it's not that far back. The United States then led a coalition to remove the Iraqi forces in what became known as Operation Desert Storm. And on February 26, 1991, the coalition succeeded in driving out the Iraqi forces. But as they retreated, do you remember this? What did they do? They started setting fire to the oil fields. Now, they didn't get all of them, but you can imagine what the pollution was like in Kuwait for that period of time. Kuwait now celebrates February 26 as its National Liberation Day. In March of 2003, Kuwait became the springboard for the U.S. invasion of Iraq. By springboard, I mean this was where the jump-off spot was. And Kuwait currently has the largest U.S. military presence in the entire Middle East. There are over 14,000 U.S. military personnel stationed in the country. Camp Arif Jan is the largest U.S. military base in Kuwait. Okay, so that's a bit of the history. I'll stop at any questions about that. It's very brief, just covering the major events.
I have one. What about the Constitution? When they formed their Constitution, who developed it?
Who developed it? A special committee under the guise of the Emir.
That's
Yeah, let's not, they have democratic, but when push comes to shove, it's a monarchy. It's the emir. And he traces that history way back. And most of they like that. And it's not something they're opposed to. He's the man, and he decides what is good for his people. And since he has the money to do it, there's not much complaint.
So the succession is always determined
through the sons. Through the sons, yeah. The eldest son.
The oil wells are owned by the government, I presume?
Yes. Everything's owned by the... You can do a whole history of oil in that area and show how the big petroleum countries, France, U.S., Britain, over time had to give up more and more of their control. But initially, it was, because the research wasn't done by the Kuwaitis. The oil wasn't discovered by the Kuwaitis. It was just on their land. Okay.
Any Christian churches at all?
A few, most because of maybe the association with the U.S. military, but no, a very small percentage maybe. The religions where you tend to have more are those from the foreigners coming in, Hindus, Buddhists, etc., Sikhs sometimes. Sometimes, yeah, Philippine Christians, and there are some small churches, but those are in designated buildings. You're not allowed to proselytize it. Okay, let's go on a tour. And we'll start with the Kuwait Towers. They're a group of 3 thin towers in Kuwait City that stand on the promontory into the Persian Gulf. Any idea what these are used for? Water storage. Water storage. These are the last group of 6 towers in what was a much larger system of 34 towers at one time. But these are the big 3 that stand in Kuwait City. Officially inaugurated in March of 1979. So the main tower that's on the left, well, it's on the left and the one on the left, and it's on the right, and the one on the right, okay? It's the main tower because it has 2 of these tanks. So it has 2 spheres. The lower sphere holds in its bottom half a water tank of 1,200,000 gallons. Its upper half is a restaurant that accommodates 90 people, a cafe, a lounge, and a reception hall. And that upper sphere completes a full turn every 30 minutes. The second tower, the middle, which is the 1 sphere, is 482 feet high, and it has, it holds, I don't know how many gallons of water, but the 2 together hold 2,400,000 gallons. Okay. So they supply a lot of the water for Kuwait City. Now you can imagine in this part of the world, water is a problem. Water is a problem, yeah. And if you want to go up to the restaurant, you can. Okay. This is where a lot of tourists will go up here because you get a very good view of the city. It rotates every 30 minutes. And the food is quite good, quite expensive, but quite good. The second area that we're going to see is a place called Al-Shaheed Park. Shaheed is Arabic for martyr, a martyr, one whose life is sacrificed in the name of his or her religion. It's the largest urban park in Kuwait. It covers 78 acres. And it's a cultural complex featuring contemporary architecture and a number of artistic installations. It includes numerous gardens, walkways, museums, exhibition spaces, and outdoor theaters for cultural events. It's one of the advantages of having this type of wealth. You can produce things like this. It contains two major museums. One, the Memorial Museum, and second, the Habitat Museum. What do you think the Memorial Museum is about? The heroes of Iraqi history. Oh, I should have mentioned, the park also has the largest green roof in the world. You know what a green roof is? It's where you grow vegetation on top of a roof. And you can see it there. That whole area is covered with vegetation, with plants. So the Memorial Museum, as I said, celebrates the heroes, the major historical events, some of which we covered, early tribal battles, all the way up to the Iraqi invasion. It does this through numerous animation, artifacts, and interactive displays. The Habitat Museum is an exhibit about the natural habitats of Kuwait. A large number of these interactive programs, scenographic recreations. Plants and animals of Kuwait, large format audio-visual productions, quite the place. And then not far away is the Martyrs Memorial. It's 85 feet high. It's a concrete sculpture shaped like an open book. It was unveiled in the early 2000s to honor the 1,300 martyrs who died during the Iraqi invasion. It was actually designed by a Japanese sculptor, Koichi Tanaka, if you're interested. It has inscriptions of Quranic verses on it, plus a poem written by the Emir. Apparently he's not a bad poet, from what I understand. Okay, our next stop is a little more traditional, the Grand Mosque of Kuwait. The Arabic term for mosque, if you ever come across it, is masjid, M-A-S-J-I-D. Mosque comes from the French. Mosque, is that right? Mosque, I think. Mosque. And so we use that French term, but throughout the Islamic world, they're known as masjid. The term usually refers to a covered building, but it can be any place where Islamic prayers are performed. You can go out into the desert where there are nomads, and you will find rocks placed, and inside those rocks are the mosque, because that's where they will stop and get off and pray. So the mosques we tend to know are these great, if you've traveled, the great elaborate buildings, but mosques can be of all sizes, shapes, and sizes. There's one in Caneo, there's one up in Newbury Park, right? If you've ever been to the Caneo Islamic Center. It's a small mosque. So that's what a mosque is, for a place of prayer, but it also serves community events. There's funerals, marriages, homeless shelters, schools. So the mosque has always been in any city, and in big cities there are many of these. The mosque is the center of activity for the community. Just like the church used to be and kind of is still here, but this is where people find their core, their spiritual center. It's the largest mosque in Kuwait. Its construction began in 1979 and completed in 1986. The area spans 480,000 square feet, out of which the building itself covers about 220,000 square feet. Its style is traditional Islamic architecture with both Persian and Spanish influences. Construction materials, marble, intricate woodwork from various types of woods, and decorative tiles. This is the courtyard. This is once you go into the main area. The mosque and all the major mosques of the world will have large courtyards, mainly because there's often an overflow. On major holidays, you can't get everyone inside the mosque. So you have these big courtyards where there is overflow. And what's that up there on the right hand? You know what that? Those are little faucets. They're ablution faucets. Before you go into the mosque, you have to wash your hands, your hair, your ears. It's a form of purification before you enter a sacred spot. Very common in all religious traditions. And water is often the symbol of purity. So you have, throughout the courtyard, you'll have these various ablution spots. The main prayer hall, 236 feet wide on all sides, with teak wood doors. These, if you've ever been in any of the art is just fantastic. The mihrab, see that gold indented area? On the left you see it from a distance, on the right you see it close up. This is the indentation in the wall, you'll find it in any mosque, that points worshipers towards Mecca. You always know where Mecca is when you pray. When you pray towards Mecca. When we went with the Ali group to Tunisia, we were in a hotel, and right on the little table stand was a little plaque pointing towards Mecca. Interestingly, in the early years, it was Jerusalem. Jerusalem was the original point of Islamic prayer. Then Muhammad changed it to Mecca. There's some of the interior. Isn't that gorgeous? You can see the calligraphy. You can see the gold-plated, what would you call those that join the columns together? Yeah. Its minaret is located on the northwest corner. It resembles Spanish architecture. A large number of Muslims migrated from Spain, what year? 1492, when Jews and Muslims were, I was going to say asked to leave. They weren't asked to leave. They were driven out. And so and many came through various areas of the Middle East. So you have these, when you look at Muslim countries, often there will be two major areas, Spanish and Jews as well, and those from Eastern Europe that were driven out. In any case, the minaret is the tower where you get music. Good timing.
Well done.
What happens in a minaret? Does anyone know? The call to prayer. Now, traditionally, that would actually be a person would go up there and call. And not just any person. Okay, you had to be trained. It was an art form. You had to be trained. Today, in most major mosques around the world, it's done by recording, yeah. Because it goes further and you can call people to prayer. what it's really known for, though, this, you want to see something in this mosque? This is the dome. That is the inner dome. 26 meters in diameter, 43 meters tall. From floor, towering above the main prayer hall. Light fills the dome through 144 windows, combined with 4 chandeliers, each with 102 bulbs. It's supported by 4 columns clad in Italian marble, extending 22 meters in height. Can you see the columns there? Those are Italian marble. That's looking up. It's decorated with what is known as the Amsa Al-Hunsa, the 99 names of God, or Allah. In Islam, it is said that Allah has 99 names, which range from all the virtues you can think of. Compassion, justice, 99 names. And that's what's written up on the inner dome. It can accommodate up to 10,000 men in the main prayer hall and up to 950 women in a separate hall for women. In traditional Islamic worship, men and women worship separately. And if they are in the same hall, the women will always be at the back. We were out at the Islamic Center in Canal Valley, and somebody raised that question. And one of the answers is, when you prostrate, that image is not one that is conducive to prayer for males. Now, whether that's, but there's always been this segregation of and especially in the Arab world, the Arab states. Okay.
When was this built?
Did I give you the date? I think. Let me see.
1979.
Yeah, 79, completed in 86. Yeah. Okay. It also has a major library with over thousands and thousands of books and documents. So a mosque is a place of worship, but it's a community center. It usually has a library, a madrasa, that is a school. It will have area for homeless when that's required. And it's open to visitors of all religions for guided tours, which is not true of all mosques around the world. Some of the big mosques, you cannot go inside. Okay, so that's the mosque. Next, we're going to go to a suburb. It's a residential area known as Jabriya, and visit the Tariq Rajab Museum. Let me give you a little history of this place. Really fascinating. It houses an extensive collection of artifacts accumulated over a 55-year period beginning in the 1940s. It's housed at 2 separate locations. There's the Tariq Rajab Museum, which was founded in 1980. And then there's the Tariq Rajab Museum of Islamic Calligraphy, which was established just in 2007. And its history starts with this gentleman up there on the right, Tariq al-Sayyid Rajab. He began as a 14-year-old with a trip to Baghdad, started collecting things. This progressed over a period of time, and then he started collecting books and manuscripts in England. And as a student, he was given a weekly allowance from Kuwait's educational office in London, which he spent mainly on books. And by the 1960s, he and his anthropologist wife traveled extensively by car around the Middle East, collecting items from dealers in Damascus, in Istanbul, as well as remote villages in Syria, Palestine, Iran. So he was traveling around the Middle East collecting all of these items. And his aim was to photograph and collect them to preserve the various cultures that he felt were being lost due to rapid modernization. He attended auctions in London, where he acquired items from such places as Christie's, the great auction houses, Bonhams, Sotheby's. And by the mid-70s, he'd amassed this major collection, which he was keeping in his house. And at that point, he began to seriously consider establishing a museum to share the collection with the public. And this eventually culminated in 1980 with the establishment of this current museum. The museum collection: manuscripts, miniatures, ceramics, metalwork, glass, arms, armor, textiles, costumes, jewelry. It has a fantastic ceramics collection. Very large, very comprehensive from across the Middle East. And includes objects that are actually pre-Islamic. So it goes back to some of this goes back to the 5th and 4th century. It has one of the foremost collections of silver and gold jewelry in the world. Again, some of this is from pre-Islamic times. And then there are numerous other collections. Musical instruments. Firearms. Carpets. And then there are rare manuscripts, old Qurans. He's collected Qurans from around the Middle East. And here I can only show you a couple, but there's a whole room just of Qurans. And here's a room just filled with other famous manuscripts. One being an original of the Shahnameh, which was the epic poem of Iran. So he over time was able to collect and buy, and he had supported the government. But if you ever happen to get to Kuwait and you want to get a feel for the culture, this is the place to go. This is the place to go. Just a side note, during the invasion, the Iraqi invasion, the museum staff packed up every item in the collection and hid the boxes in secluded places. Not all of them some of them were found and destroyed, but by and large, the majority were saved, and the museum opened again in 1991. Like I said, in 2007, he opened another museum just for Islamic calligraphy. Calligraphy comes from the ancient Greek word, which means beautiful writing. It's the design and execution of lettering with pen, ink brush, and other instruments, but traditionally ink brush. It can be defined as the art of giving form to signs, and that's all words are, signs, in an expressive, harmonious, and artful manner. Calligraphy is an art, a very high art form in the Middle East. And because of the Arabic alphabet, it really provides a freedom to express that. So here's a couple of examples from the collection. That's just the collection at large. I wish I had a bigger screen so you could see these, but they're just gorgeous. They're just gorgeous. Okay, I want to take you to a very different museum. It's called the Mirror House. Sorry, there's a better example of calligraphy. The Mirror House, or the House of Mirrors, also known as the Khalifa and Lydia Katan Art Museum. I'm going to get a kick out of this place. It was conceived by Lydia, who's an Italian-born painter, sculptor, and jeweler, and her late husband, who was a trailblazer in Kuwait's modern art scene. In 1972, the couple transformed their home into a work of art. It was worked on intermediately until its completion in 2006. The exterior walls of the house are covered with murals or mirror mosaics, each design symbolizing some specific meaning. The interior ground floor is completely covered in mirror mosaic, from floors to walls to ceilings. Each room has a separate theme, such as Planet Earth, Zodiac Hall, Universe Hall, Knowledge Hall, etc. 75 to 100 tons of mirror and white cement have been used. So let's go inside. Yep, the floor, the ceilings, everything. Yeah, you got your that's your computer room. Yeah, so in any case, it's not my type of thing, but it's rather interesting, I think. Okay, we got a little bit left. I want to take you to one of the old souks. You know what a souk is? A souk is the bazaar, the old marketplace. Whoops. That's the bathroom, sorry. This is the Souk al-Mabarikiya. It's the oldest souk in Kuwait. It was a center of trade before the discovery of oil. It's been in operation, this marketplace, for over 200 years. Its vendors sell carpets, antiques, perfumes, gold, jewelry. You can find anything in one of these souks. It also has dates, produce. Has anyone been to a Muslim city and gone through, or even, let's say, Jerusalem and gone through a souk? Amazing experience. These are the traditional markets. Okay? The traditional, and you'll see we're going to contrast this in a moment with the new malls. The new malls. It contains also this, there's another one. There's a very good, that's how these markets look, with all these different offshoots off. And you can get lost in these places. It also has the Sheikh Mubarak kiosk. You remember old Sheikh Mubarak? He ruled Kuwait from 1896 to 1915, and the souk is named after him. And during his reign, he would tour it every afternoon in a black Victorian carriage drawn by black horses. And he built this kiosk in the market so that people could come and meet with him if they had any complaints. His office was located on the second floor, and he could see everything that was going on down below. So you can still go through that kiosk. There's a courtyard nearby. Has traditional cafes, small restaurants that serves authentic Arab and Persian food. There's a child's playground not far away. The market was damaged during the invasion. It has been, is now reopened and operating in full. Okay, compare that to this. Kuwait has two major shopping malls, the Avenues and the Marina Hall. The Avenues is one of the largest shopping malls in the world. It incorporates modern with traditional architecture, creating a traditional atmosphere while trying to maintain a modern appearance. There are numerous shops, cafes, restaurants. This is where most of the tourists go. I prefer the old souk myself, but this is high end. Every high end store in the world you'll find at the Avenues. It has a cinema. Then there's Marina World. Marina World. It's a mixed development project. It's connected to the marina by this glass enclosed walkway. The mall has, again, more than 150 different high-end shops. With, again, cafes, restaurants. So this is actually what many of these Gulf states are known. Their wealth has allowed them to have these, I guess some people would say, magnificent malls and shopping areas.
Oil has paid for all this stuff.
Oil has paid for it. Yep. With even a little extra to give to everybody else.
They're all air conditioned, right?
Oh, yes.
So you can just hang out.
Yeah. And we will see, I think, in one of the other, there's large solar panels out in the desert that there's a lot of sun out there. Okay, the last place, if you're interested in going to the beach, which many tourists are, it's the Al-Khout beach. White sand, palm-lined promenade. There's a small marina. And again, your restaurants and your cafes. And if you're still into windsurfing, you can do that. So more of a recreational area. And it's also known for its beautiful sunsets. Okay, that is Kuwait. And we'll be moving next week to Qatar, which I was just informed was bombed today. The Israelis bombed Qatar. I don't know how much damage there was, but they were probably after specific individuals, I would imagine. The Hamas political leadership has been in Qatar for quite a while. Okay, any questions, comments?
Dr. Good, is there some concern among traditionalists about those new malls? Or are they kept pretty much under?
I think not. I don't think there's any problem because they bring in a lot of money. They already have a lot of money, but tourists come in and they spend lots of money there. Yeah. I think traditionalists maybe go to the souk, and maybe they're happy about that. We'll go to the souk. You guys have that stuff. But the souk is just neat because you see all sorts of different things. It's not all clean. It gets a little smelly. Thank God. Yes.
What are the year-round temperatures?
I don't have the exact figures, but it's pretty warm and in the summer it's pretty much unbearable. I was in Dubai in early September of 2 years ago, and it was well over 105 every day. So everything is air conditioned. I think during the spring it gets down into the 80s. So if you're going to go, the spring is probably a good time. Okay, so next week we'll be going to Qatar. And it's not Qatar, it's Qatar.